The alien students had come from all corners of the universe, visiting Earth as part of an intergalactic exchange program. Their task: to study human culture, to immerse themselves in Earth's history, and, most importantly, to analyze what made humans so fascinating. They were keen, excited even, to learn from the tiny blue planet and its inhabitants. However, there was one thing they found utterly perplexing: the notorious human ban. At first, the alien students thought it was some kind of joke. They couldn't fathom why any species would ban its own members from doing something so basic, like gathering in public spaces without restrictions or sharing food freely. It seemed absurd, even laughable. The very idea of a ban on humans was so out of place in their advanced society. One day, the students gathered in their bright, high-tech classroom, their holographic screens flickering as they sifted through centuries of Earth's data. They laughed at the idea, mocking it among themselves. "How primitive! How utterly foolish!" they chided, their voices echoing in the sterile classroom. Humans, unable to make their own decisions without permission, trapped in a never-ending loop of rules and restrictions. But then, one of the students, Zarnok, an exchange student from a planet known for its near-perfect social structure, found something strange. The footage. It was an old recording from Earth, captured during the height of the human ban. It showed crowds of humans, silent and still, eyes glued to massive screens as the global announcement came through. The footage was hauntingly still, the faces filled with confusion, anxiety, and, most shockingly, fear. Zarnok's fingers hovered over the control panel, his once dominant laughter now silenced. He clicked play. The screen flickered, and a voice boomed through the classroom. The announcement was clear. "Attention, citizens of Earth, the human ban is now in effect. All non-human entities must cease interaction with human subjects. This decision has been made after careful deliberation due to unforeseen risks." The alien students sat frozen. They had been laughing at the humans, thinking them weak and inferior. But now, as the footage continued, they saw what no one had anticipated: the humans' response. They had complied without question. They stood still, facing the screens, waiting. Some wiped away tears. Others stood in defiant silence. A few began to chant, their voices rising together, creating a strange harmony. Zarnok paused the footage, his eyes wide. What was this? How did they endure this, without breaking? The class remained in stunned silence, as if the entire concept of human resilience had just shattered their preconceived notions. The students, who had mocked the humans for their perceived weakness, now realized something profound about the very nature of humanity. In their desire for control, they hadn't realized that humans, though bound by rules, had an unparalleled strength, one that even the most advanced civilizations might struggle to comprehend. But it wasn't just about endurance. It was the reaction after the ban had been lifted. As footage continued to play, the world saw humans rallying together, standing stronger than ever. They had built a new world from the rubble of their restrictions, and they had done it together. The resilience was not just in surviving the ban, it was in their unwavering unity and determination to rise again. The students, humbled, began to question their own societies. Had they, with all their advanced technology and precision, ever faced such a trial? Had they ever truly been tested in ways that would unite them as humans had been? The class watched as the final frame of the footage showed the words written in bold letters across the screen. The human ban was not their end, but their beginning. And in that moment, everything changed. The alien students had no answers to the questions now swirling in their minds. But they knew one thing for certain: they had underestimated humans, and now they were finally beginning to understand why Earth was so significant in the vast cosmos. As the classroom lights flickered back on, Zarnok slowly turned to his peers. The mocking had stopped. They had seen something they couldn't ignore, a lesson they would carry forever. And the Earth. It was no longer just a planet to study. It was a place of infinite possibility. Zarnok sat there, his mind racing. He'd always thought of Earth as a mere stopover in their academic journey, a place to study an unremarkable species with outdated technologies. But the footage he had just witnessed, those humans, their quiet defiance, their ability to endure even the harshest of rules, had shaken him to his core. How could a species with so little in the way of physical strength or technology, compared to the rest of the galaxy, hold such power in their spirit? One of his peers, Vector, who had once scoffed at the humans' primitive ways, now looked at the footage with a deep sense of respect. I didn't realize," he murmured, his voice low. "We thought we were beyond such things, such struggles. But these humans, they survived when we thought they couldn't." Zarnok nodded slowly, still processing the meaning of the images. "It's not about surviving, is it?" he said quietly. "It's about the way they've learned to rise. To unite when everything tells them to divide. To push forward when they're told to stop." The classroom fell into a heavy silence. They were not just studying a species anymore. They were learning something new about the very essence of existence. One of the students, a sharp-minded alien from a distant planet, Arnathal, spoke up. "I think we're missing something important here. Yes, the humans endured. But think about this, the ban itself was a test. It was a deliberate effort to see how they'd respond when their freedoms were taken away. And look at them. They didn't just survive, they turned it into a collective movement. A movement for equality, for the right to exist on their own terms." The implications of this statement rippled through the room. Zarnok felt the weight of it. The humans had faced an existential crisis, yes. But they had responded with a form of rebellion that wasn't chaotic, but incredibly organized. They did not destroy their world in retaliation. They created a new future from the ashes of their oppression. For the first time in their study of Earth, the alien students saw that the real strength of humanity lay in their vulnerability. Humans were not invincible in the traditional sense. They didn't have superhuman abilities, nor could they manipulate time or space. What they did have, however, was an intrinsic drive to evolve, adapt, and find hope even in the most dire circumstances. "What does this mean for us?" Zarnok asked, staring at the footage again. "We came here to study them, but maybe there's something they can teach us instead." Vector, always the skeptic, was unusually quiet. Then, finally, he spoke. "Perhaps it's time we stop looking at them as a study subject and begin looking at them as equals. Maybe there's a reason Earth is so central to the galaxy." This idea hung in the air, and for the first time, it wasn't just the footage that captivated the students. It was the thought of a universe full of alien civilizations, each one looking down on Earth, perhaps with the same sense of superiority that the students themselves had once held. Perhaps Earth wasn't a dying, primitive world at all. Perhaps it was a model for the universe, an example of how power doesn't always lie in strength or technology, but in the ability to resist and rebuild when everything seems lost. Zarnok turned away from the screen and looked around at his peers. They were all deep in thought, each processing the new reality of Earth. He thought back to the footage, to those human faces, some of fear, some of quiet strength, and wondered what would happen if they, too, could tap into this extraordinary resilience. What if they, too, could face their own trials and emerge stronger for it? As the holographic classroom slowly began to power down, Zarnok couldn't shake the feeling that the human lesson was only just beginning. They had come to Earth to observe, but now they were being transformed by it. The study of human culture had become the study of something much greater, the study of what it means to survive, to unite, and to rebuild after everything has been taken away. And as the last light of the projector faded, Zarnok whispered to himself, "Maybe it's time we looked beyond just their weaknesses. Maybe it's time we learned what they truly have to teach us." ChatGPT said. Zarnok's thoughts were interrupted by the soft hum of the classroom doors opening. A member of the council, a higher-ranking official from the alien civilization that had organized the exchange program, entered. She was a seasoned observer, tasked with overseeing the academic progress of the exchange students. Her eyes gleamed with the knowledge of many galaxies and civilizations, but there was an unusual tension in the air as she walked toward the center of the room. "You've all been quiet," she observed, her voice calm but carrying a weight of authority. "I presume the footage has had a profound effect on you." The students exchanged uneasy glances. What was once a jovial mockery of human society had now transformed into a deep, respectful silence. They nodded slowly, unsure of how to explain the transformation in their understanding of Earth and its inhabitants. Zarnok, still grappling with the enormity of what they had just witnessed, stepped forward. "Yes, the footage. It changed everything. We came here to study humans and found ourselves instead." The council member raised an eyebrow. "Found yourselves?" she repeated, her tone laced with curiosity. "In what way?" Zarnok paused. Humans, they've endured much more than we ever realized. Their true power isn't in their technology or their physical strength. It's in their ability to persevere when everything is taken from them. They survive not by conquering their world, but by rising above it. And they do so together, united in their struggle. The council member took a moment to absorb his words. You've learned the most valuable lesson of all, Zarnok. Sometimes, the strength of a species isn't measured by its weapons or its scientific advances. Sometimes, it's measured by its capacity to endure, to adapt, and to forge a future from the darkest of times. Another student, Arnathal, spoke up. But the question remains. Why did the ban happen in the first place? Was it a mistake? Or was it a test? The council member's gaze turned reflective. The ban was no mistake. It was a design challenge, a trial meant to push humans to their limit and observe their response. But the real test wasn't in the ban itself, it was in the way humans responded. The ban was a catalyst, a moment in history that forced humans to come together and reimagine their world. She paused, looking directly at the group of students. You see, young ones, every civilization has a defining moment. A test, a challenge, an obstacle that will either break them or make them stronger. Some civilizations never face such trials. Some face them and falter. But the greatest civilizations, they learn from these trials and grow, evolving in ways that can never be predicted. The ban, for all its cruelty, was one such defining moment for humans. And they passed it. Zarnok felt the weight of her words settle over him. So, we weren't just watching history. We were witnessing the moment that defined their future. The council member nodded. Exactly. And now, you have a choice. You can continue to study them from a distance, as a mere object of curiosity. Or you can engage with them, learn from them, and perhaps even help them reach their full potential. The future of humanity is uncertain, but what you saw today, what you witnessed in that footage, that's what makes them worthy of study. Their resilience. Their capacity to evolve. The students fell into deep thought. The truth had never been so clear, and yet so complex. They had come to Earth with one perspective, one shaped by their own advanced societies, where everything was meticulously planned and controlled. But the humans, they had turned chaos into a force for change. They had faced oppression, restrictions, and adversity, and instead of breaking, they had risen. Zarnok's mind drifted back to the final moments of the footage, where the words on the screen had flashed. The human ban was not their end, but their beginning. Those words echoed in his thoughts as he realized that the aliens had, in a way, underestimated humanity. They had thought Earth was a primitive planet, a footnote in the cosmic story. But now they understood. It was a living testament to the strength of resilience and unity. As the council member left the room, she turned and added, "Remember, your task is not just to observe, but to learn. Earth has much to teach you. And one day, you may even find that the greatest lesson is not just in how to survive, but how to thrive." Zarnok and the others watched her leave, and for the first time, they felt the true weight of their mission. They had come to Earth to observe, to study a species they had deemed inferior. But they were walking away with something far more valuable than knowledge. They were walking away with a deeper understanding of what it meant to be alive, to struggle, and to rise. In the days that followed, the alien students found themselves drawn to the humans they had once looked down upon. They watched from afar as humans continued to rebuild, grow, and evolve, their societies becoming stronger with every challenge they faced. And with each passing day, Zarnok couldn't help but wonder, what would happen if the rest of the galaxy learned this same lesson? What if, like humans, every civilization could unite, adapt, and rebuild, even when the odds seemed insurmountable? Perhaps, just maybe, the galaxy was on the brink of its own defining moment. As the days turned into weeks, the alien students began to immerse themselves more deeply in the world of humanity. They traveled to Earth cities, observed human behavior, and spent time with the people they had once seen as a subject of mockery. The humans they met were not perfect, they were flawed, like any other species. But there was something undeniably captivating about the way humans approached their flaws, how they faced their imperfections, learned from them, and tried again. Zarnok, who had once been the most skeptical of all, now found himself deeply moved by the human spirit. He would often sit with a group of humans in a local park, watching as they laughed and shared stories of their struggles. They spoke openly about their past mistakes, their fears, and their hopes for the future. And yet, despite all the adversity they had faced, there was a shared understanding among them. They were not defined by their failures, but by their determination to rise above them. One afternoon, Zarnok found himself sitting with a human woman named Clara, a young entrepreneur who had recently started a sustainable food company. She had been telling him about her company's struggles to get off the ground and how, despite facing numerous setbacks, she refused to give up on her dream. "We all face challenges," she said, her voice calm but filled with conviction. "But what matters is how we respond. You can choose to stay down, or you can choose to get back up, stronger than before. It's not about perfection, it's about persistence." Zarnok was struck by her words. They echoed the very lessons he had learned in the classroom. Humans, in their own way, had mastered the art of perseverance. They didn't just endure, they transformed their hardships into stepping stones for growth. And it wasn't just Clara. He saw the same spirit in countless humans he met, people from all walks of life, each facing their own challenges, but each determined to rise. He began to wonder if there was a deeper lesson here, one that went beyond resilience. Could this persistence, this unyielding drive to evolve, be the key to a civilization's survival? Was it possible that humanity's true strength lay not in its ability to conquer, but in its capacity to adapt and transform? The more Zarnok observed, the more he realized that Earth was not just a planet of survivors. It was a planet of innovators, creators, and dreamers. The humans he had initially dismissed as primitive were, in fact, the very embodiment of the idea that struggle and adversity were not obstacles but opportunities for growth. They were pioneers in the truest sense of the word, not because they had mastered their environment, but because they had learned to live with it, adapt to it, and even shape it to their will. Zarnok shared his thoughts with his fellow students. They, too, had begun to see humanity in a new light. Vector, who had once dismissed the humans as inferior, now marveled at their capacity for reinvention. "I thought their technology was their strength," he said. "But now I see, it's their hearts, their minds. They don't just build machines. They build hope." As the alien students continued their study of Earth, their understanding of the planet deepened. They began to realize that their role here was not to simply observe, but to help guide humanity toward its full potential. If humans could face adversity with such grace and resilience, perhaps the rest of the galaxy could learn something from their example. Zarnok and his peers started to work alongside human scientists, engineers, and thinkers, sharing their advanced knowledge of space travel, renewable energy, and medical technology. But they also learned from humans how to dream, how to fail and try again, how to look at a problem not as an obstacle, but as an opportunity to create something better. One evening, as Zarnok walked through the streets of a bustling Earth city, he realized something profound. The footage they had first watched, the footage that had sparked their journey of discovery, was just the beginning. The true story of humanity wasn't just about surviving the ban. It was about the people they had become because of it. Humans had taken their greatest trial and turned it into the very foundation of their future. They had proven that even in the darkest moments, there was always room for growth, innovation, and hope. And just as Zarnok stood there, contemplating this revelation, he caught sight of the stars overhead. In that moment, he understood that the galaxy was not just made up of advanced civilizations and powerful empires. It was a galaxy full of stories waiting to be written, and the humans of Earth were just beginning their chapter. Perhaps it was time for the rest of the universe to learn from them, too. ChatGPT said. As Zarnok looked up at the stars, a deep sense of purpose settled within him. The universe was vast, and humanity was but a small part of it, yet in their resilience, their capacity to adapt and rise, they had unlocked something extraordinary. The rest of the galaxy had much to learn from Earth's story, not just about survival, but about the power of transformation. And perhaps, in helping humanity reach its full potential, the alien students would discover their own path to greatness. For in the end, it wasn't the challenges that defined them, but how they chose to face them. And Earth, with all its imperfections, had shown the universe that the greatest strength lay in the ability to rise, again and again, no matter what came their way.